How often do you think we should service our, how often should I serve my AC at home?
The standard usually is biannually,
Okay.
like twice a year.
I've heard that it's not good to turn off the water heater when you go on holidays, that you should leave it on.
I could not disagree more.
Okay.
As someone who has had it explode in their unit before and flood it, you should definitely be turning it off.
What role do you think should developers play in providing cost savings for the occupants?
I think that the first thing, which we touched on, is designing in sustainability, not treating it as something that comes at the end. Like having sustainability informed design decisions early on.
Unfortunately, many people still associate green buildings with high cost. How accurate is that perception today, and why is still sustainability promoted as expensive?
When people start associating sustainability as something that is expensive, it becomes almost a time discussion of, is it a capex expense, or are we looking at the building as the initial cost, or are we looking at the lifetime cost of running the building? Which I think has to do a lot with the early assumptions that sustainability is going to be an expensive addition to my budget. Rather, we treat it as this is part of the design process. This is part of the architect's process. This is part of the mechanical engineer's process. So the cost doesn't get absorbed in the same way.
What challenges do developers face when it comes to bringing sustainability or sustainable developments to the norm in the market?
So who pays for it, the developer, and who feels it, the occupant or the user or the tenant. If tenants don't know to ask for sustainability or to ask for more efficient buildings, then there isn't a case for it.
The UAE is known for turning plans into reality, like very, very fast. So there's always that speed to the market that everybody needs to meet.
The way that we find solutions has to match that rate, because the more and more time that we take to address what is not climate change anymore, we're really in like a full throttle climate crisis. We don't have the luxury of time to react to it.
Welcome everyone to the Sustainability Lounge by Emirates Green Building Council. This is a sustainability space where passionate members and partners of the council meet, collaborate, learn and share knowledge on sustainability in the built environment to make the UAE greener. I am David Ramos, I'm board member of EmiratesGBC. Today, as we speak, the Council is celebrating its 20th anniversary of impact on people and the planet. And on this occasion, we would like to raise awareness of occupants in the UAE on how green buildings make living more affordable. Join us today, we have a special guest, the Associate Director and Technical Lead of Sustainability at AESG, and a corporate member of the Council. Ms. Aza Elnimah, welcome to the Sustainability Lounge and to this podcast.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Good. Let's get into it with some of the difficult questions that I will be asking you. Unfortunately, many people still associate green buildings with high cost. How accurate is that perception today, and why is still sustainability promoted as expensive?
I think I'll answer this in three parts and timeline. So I think back then, it's a bit of an outdated point of view. So back then, this thought of sustainability being expensive had a lot to do with the premium associated with sustainability. So the tech wasn't as caught up. So it would cost a lot more to put things into a building, like an efficient insulation, LED lighting, all of these different features. Now, a lot of those requirements are actually kind of implemented into the code. So we have mandatory standards such as Al-Safat in Dubai or Mostadam in Abu Dhabi. LEED is one that we often use here. But for the first two, these are part of the building code. And rather than back then when sustainability was stuck on at the end and became a premium, it's part of the design process. So very often nowadays, sustainability has a very limited cost increase, if not none, because it's part of the integrated design process and part of the code design in itself. So the view in itself is a bit of a dated view that sustainability is an add-on, because we have started implementing it from the very early on design process and making it the standard.
Okay. So if I hear right, the technology has evolved And obviously, when technology evolves, it becomes more affordable. And then the baseline has already raised. So then we have those sustainability standards that many years ago were much more expensive to implement. Now is that baseline, that basic norm. So then buildings, in theory, or developers, they don't have any excuse, I would say, not to build sustainably because it's already affordable enough.
100%. I think that the one element is that we keep raising the bar, which is what we should be doing. So there is an evolution in that, but the way in which we design has evolved. So we don't treat sustainability as something that comes in the end at the budget, which I think has to do a lot with the early assumptions that sustainability is going to be an expensive addition to my budget. Rather, we treat it as this is part of the design process. This is part of the architect's process. This is part of the mechanical engineer's process. So the cost doesn't get absorbed in the same way. As the ambition continues to rise.
Yeah. And I would also say, probably, maybe correct me if I'm wrong, but there is a time dimension in there. Like when you look at investment, obviously you look at CapEx, initial investment on a project, but it has been proven that sustainable buildings over the long term, they are much more affordable to maintain and all of that. So the long-term savings probably outrun the initial investment that is required for those additional measures, right?
I think this is actually the correct way of framing this, that like when people start associating sustainability as something that is expensive, it becomes almost a time discussion of, is it a CapEx expense? Or are we looking at the building as the initial cost? Or are we looking at the lifetime cost of running the building? And often when you have that proposition of the CapEx cost versus the running cost of the building, it weighs out that sustainability is actually not that massive of an expense, because you are designing the life of the building and the experience of the building at value.
Yeah, that's good. Perfect. Let's move to the next one. You work obviously on your role in AESG. You work with a lot of developers and you interact with them on a daily basis, I would say, probably. So what role do you think should developers play in providing cost savings for the occupants and therefore attracting those occupants towards more sustainable buildings?
I think that the first thing, which we touched on, is designing in sustainability, not treating it as something that comes at the end. Like having sustainability inform design decisions early on. And then subsequent to that is showing it. So when I say showing it, I mean things like metering those decisions. So having the decisions you made in design be displayed, sharing it throughout the process. So where there are opportunities to connect to district cooling or to have shared renewables on the roof, share that expense or share that sustainability aspect. And then the final one is selling it. I've learned over time. So when I first started working in this field, I've been working in sustainability from the onset of my career to now. I used to come across and try to sell to developers that like, we need a safer future. We need the next generation to be prepared. And I've just realized like eyes get gazed, like you kind of lose people that way. But if you approach the discussion from the point of view that the value add is health, well-being, and durability for your future, inherently, efficiency is going to come out of that. So speaking the language of developers, that this is the value add for you, and having a building that improves the health and well-being of occupants and is more durable is inherently more energy efficient. It is a higher performing building. So I think it's often a semantics issue that we have outused or sometimes greenwashed the term green. So I don't really even hear people talking about that anymore. They're talking about performance rather than certification. So not having buildings necessarily have a stamp on them because it comes across as in marketing, but rather focusing on outcome-based buildings. So how is this building performing better? Exactly. Like if it is a building that can be measured, it is an engineered building.
Yeah.
So
that's a very good point. And I was talking recently to one developer that I won't name, but they were saying that they can demonstrate that sustainability really doesn't add any cost and they are actually saving money when they are developing in this way. But that's because they have integrated, as you were saying before, sustainability as part of the design. So then there's no additional things that they have to put in there as an extra cost. They kind of split it across different businesses. And I think probably, I mean, I've been in the sustainability field across different industries for almost 20 years or more than 20 years even. And I've seen a little bit of that evolution, like where sustainability wasn't even wanted to be discussed because it was everybody associated with more expensive things and all of that. Then it came a race where sustainability was at the center of everything, right? Like it became of the last maybe 5 to 10 years. Everybody was talking sustainability, climate, all of that. And I think now we are in that phase where it's less about talking about it and more about integrating it into the business as usual, and then companies get on with it, which is the right approach, I think.
Yeah.
Good. Challenges. Continuing with the developers. What challenges do developers face when it comes to bringing sustainability or sustainable developments to the norm in the market?
I think one that's quite often experienced with developers in terms of sustainability is that discussion we had very early on, which is the CapEx versus the OpEx. So who pays for it, the developer, and who feels it, the occupant or the user or the tenant. So that proposition of getting the developer to kind of embrace the value and see it as, I don't want to over monetize the term sustainability, but to see how they can actually pass that down, right? And then the next thing is demand. So if tenants don't know to ask for sustainability or to ask for more efficient buildings, then there isn't a case for it. Like developers won't design for it. So that responsibility kind of trickles down to us also who are buying into these buildings. The next one is speed. I think a challenge is when developers decide to embed high performance and sustainability into buildings very late in the process. And then the final one is supply chain. So having a supply chain that actually meets the demands of what you are defining as an efficient building. So having a market that has EPDs available regionally. So you don't want to, for instance, say, I want to get materials that have environmental product declarations, but I'm going to have to source them from so far away that I'm creating a new issue with the amount of carbon consumed in transporting them. So having a supply chain that is fully equipped to kind of push this agenda forward.
Okay. You mentioned speed there, and that's a very important topic in supply chains as well, but let's start with speed because the UAE is known for turning plans into reality like very, very fast. So there's always that speed to the market that everybody needs to meet. So do you think they should be a bit slower? They should kind of lower the bar on that need of speed so they can really integrate things in a more sustainable way? Or do you think it can be done at the same speed but also sustainably?
I think, if I'm understanding your question correctly, I think that the question is, are we moving at a speed that's too fast to tackle the climate challenge that we're potentially greenwashing?
Much better way of framing it. Thank you.
So no, I actually think that the speed is, even though it is exponential here, the way that we find solutions has to match that rate, because the more and more time that we take to address what is not climate change anymore, we're really in like a full throttle climate crisis. We don't have the luxury of time to react to it. Like we have to be exponentially reactive in finding solutions for it. So I think that having very ambitious goals and finding solutions towards them is the point of view and position that we should be coming from.
Okay. And touching on supply chains, I think it's also very important where things are being manufactured in this world nowadays and the impact of those supply chains. Obviously not to talk about what's going on these days, but the long-term impact of maybe production centers being placed in certain countries and then having things shipped all over the world. A little bit on that question is like, does it make sense to start innovating more and producing a lot of those more sustainable materials options? Let's talk about the easiest one, solar panels locally instead of having to import them from all over the world. Would it make sense that there is created an industry about those sustainable options, delocalized or kind of centralized in several countries around the world?
Yeah, this is an interesting one. It's a bit of a challenging question, but I think that in this issue, particularly like this climate issue that is the center of the work that we do, we have this thing that we kind of have to act globally on, but act very locally on. So there are how do I say this? There are economies and countries that kind of contributed a lot more to this than others, but others will pay for it more. So I do think that there is value in developing local and circular economies around finding solutions. And I think that in order to solve this, information hoarding isn't going to be the solution, but rather sharing. So if someone did find a solution to something, finding a way to localize that solution and implement it is much more innovative than kind of working in silos. And I'm not sure if I answered your question.
Indeed. And I like that you touched on circular economy, because obviously I think we've lived in a society that is very much linear in terms of how we use resources, and we need to move towards that more circular way of looking at things and looking at what do we have in country that we can use, and then create an industry around it, and all of those, how to convert those waste materials for certain industries, convert them into resources for other industries, and hopefully more sustainably, more sustainable practices. Like obviously in the built environment, there is a massive opportunity for recycled cement, all of those things, and kind of reduce the kind of embedded carbon content in the buildings. So that's a very interesting topic that you brought in there. Thank you for that. Let's talk now about the people living in those more sustainable buildings, the occupants. What can they do, these occupants, in their homes or offices to kind of reduce their expenses in electricity, water, and all of that?
I think user behavior is always an important one, but people who are in new stock buildings or more high performance buildings have an advantage. It's really the existing stock people where small things, it's a bit corny in a sense to say, but truly like the biggest issue we have here is cooling. So just turning down the cooling by 2 degrees, if you're someone that likes it at 20 degrees, turning it up to 23, that makes a huge difference. Another one is servicing your unit, making sure you're servicing it, because a unit that's not serviced or neglected takes a lot more to perform at the same level as one that's taken care of. Switching things off in terms of lighting, taking advantage of daylight, while even if that's passive light, you have some type of curtains that are keeping heat out, but letting in some daylight, turning off lights in spaces that you're not occupying. In terms of water, having efficient fixtures and fittings in spaces, and water in itself, like you use energy to heat it and cool it. So using water efficiently, these types of things actually do make a difference. You don't need to renovate your space sometimes. You just need to behave differently in it to get the best out of it.
I like the service in the AC. First of all, there is also a health component to it, and we all spend a lot of time indoors in this country and in general, right, everywhere. So I think that's a very important topic. And then, how often do you think we should service our, how often should I serve my AC at home?
The standard usually is biannually.
Okay.
Like twice a year around the heat, summer and winter.
So twice a year, okay.
Yeah, twice a year. And it's usually cleaning it or changing the filter, etc. But it does make a difference. Even in your unit, you might find yourself getting sick less.
Yeah, of course, yeah. Good. And the water component, you refer mainly to the water heaters and all of that we all have, and the energy they take to heat up the water and not to waste that water, or was there something else?
Yeah, for sure. I know so many people here that just they never turn off their water heater, and I was guilty of that at a point.
Okay, I like that. That's interesting, because I've heard that it's not good to turn off the water heater when you go on holidays, that you should leave it on, because then it could...
I could not disagree more.
Okay.
As someone who has had it explode in their unit before and flood it, you should definitely be turning it off.
Okay.
Even sustainability aside, to just sustain and not damage your products, turn off your water heaters when you travel.
Okay.
If you're not going to be using it for 2 days straight, for sure turn it off. That should be considered travel. But in general, just turning it off. You don't need to constantly be heating your water if you're not using it.
That's very interesting. Everybody this summer, please turn off your water heaters. Okay. Good. Let's move to the next question. And obviously, you're very much aware the UAE has this very ambitious net zero vision by 2050. And I think the built environment is going to play a huge role on this transition to the net zero. But do you think we have the financial resources and the tools to support a sustainable transition here in this country?
Yeah, I think in terms of the direction, we have net zero 2050 that we're all aspiring towards, and we have policies built around that are functioning. In terms of the tools, there are green financing tools, ESCO tools, there's the rating systems that have been put in place that are there. But I really do think that the challenge is more so to do not with the existing building, not with the new buildings, but with the existing stock. A lot of the challenge will be around there, but there are tools and direction in place. It just has to do with mobilizing it at scale, and really building out that approach.
Okay, so you're talking about retrofitting the buildings that are already there, that stock.
Yeah.
How feasible it is? I would assume, and you tell me if I'm wrong, but I would assume it's much more expensive to retrofit a building that is not built sustainably than to build it right from the start.
No.
No? Okay.
No, I would disagree, actually. I think that there is a cost there. They're associated with it. But even from a sustainability point of view, the sustainability proposition of building something from new in itself is not sustainable. So if something was not there and you are starting from the beginning, but you unlock a lot of potential, for instance, of depending on how big that retrofit is, of salvaging materials, replacing systems, keeping systems, repurposing systems, trading trade-offs when you have existing stock. I think buildings generally have a lifespan, sometimes of 100 years, sometimes of 50 years. And with the age of where we live, we are actually at that point. Yeah. We're at that apex of we can start having these conversations about the majority of building stock, and we can start looking at buildings of heritage, the stories these buildings told over time, how we preserve them rather than wipe them down and start over. There's this really great writer, I think that anyone who studied like urban planning or architecture would know, which is Jane Jacobs. She has this book which everyone reads at a point in their higher education career, called The Life and Death of Great American Cities. And it really has to do with this approach of not treating cities and places as just something you come over and start again, but thinking of cities and places as living organisms that have stories and they're complex, that you don't approach them by wiping their history and wiping their existence and the stories they told, but really retelling what they can do and their purpose. I worked in this project in Qatar. I used to live and work in Qatar for some time, and it used to be a fire station, and it was repurposed completely into an art gallery. Oh, wow. The story of the fire station stayed. So it's actually part of the art display in itself. You see like the features of the building, which were the fire station there, and it creates a new value for a property like that when you can actually tell the story of everywhere that building has been and where it is today. Even outside of the systems that you use, like you might put systems there differently because some spaces were not used the same way. They didn't have the same number of occupants, but you are saving material in the end. You are saving land in the end. You're repurposing things. So I do think that there is value in repurposing and taking care of our buildings and finding an upgrade for them to drive the sustainability of them rather than wiping their history and starting over. I love that. Yeah, it reminded me of a hotel I was some time ago in Sri Lanka that used to be a tea factory, and they turned into a hotel, but they kept most of the elements of the tea factory. And it really gave a very much premium experience to the whole stay because of what you're saying, because you keep the soul of the building intact, and you could see years and years of history, what had happened in there. All those pictures. Was a very, very nice story. I think also people of this region generally value that. Like a lot of history has kind of been displaced because of what happens in this region, and there's value in preserving identity. And that identity and culture don't function outside of high performance. They can be hand in hand. It's not always new is better, but finding different ways to work with what we have and make the best of it. Aza, thank you for that. That was a very interesting conversation so far, but we're not done. And now you need to work a little bit because you have there a little card like these ones, and you need to write, and I will do it as well, but we need to both of us write down in this card a few words or one word on what sustainability means to you personally, not on your role, but like what do you think sustainability is from your personal experience, and then we're going to show it to the camera. So we can write. Okay, so I wrote down the best kind of sustainability is the kind you never notice. And I think it has to do with the buildings we occupy. So those decisions being made before you're even in the building, and the way we live. So the tree you grew up around, the traditions you inherited, those things, you never notice them, but they are what are sustainable.
That's very deep. And now I have to show mine, which is not as deep as that one, but so for me, and this is for you, so you can see it. For me, sustainability, I've always said that is a journey. At the end, we always aim to be more sustainable, but I don't think it's a goal that we can meet as a like the sustainable, being sustainable as a concept. It doesn't exist. There's always, as we were talking before, progress. There's always more opportunities to do things better, the circular economy, the finding new materials, new resources. So I think it's of continuing that journey constantly and always aiming for higher and more impactful way of doing things. That's why I always like to frame sustainability as a journey more than a destination.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. 100%.
Thank you. Good. We are almost at the end. Thank you, Aza. It's been really a pleasure, I can say honestly. Thank you to the Emirates Green Building Council for organizing this and giving us the opportunity to participate. And thank you to all of you for listening. I'll just finish with a few recommendations. If you like this, if you want to know more about what the Emirates Green Building Council is doing, the first thing that you should know is that the Emirates GBC is hosting the 15th annual Congress in October. And this is kind of the UAE's built environment leading annual gathering. And also you have the opportunity to attend the MENA Green Buildings Award Gala Dinner, that this celebrates organizations for their outstanding performance in the building sector. You can learn more about this by using the link in the description of the podcast. Then if you like the space, this beautiful sustainability lounge, please contact us. If you want to be part of it, you can become a member of the council. You can attend the ongoing workshops that are organizing on a regular basis, and they are very, very interesting. So please, there is a link as well, another link on the description where you can actually become a member and ask for more information about all of this. Finally, subscribe if you like this podcast. Subscribe. There are more to come, and also please follow us. Follow the Emirates GBC in social media channels. They are all everywhere, in LinkedIn, in Instagram, everywhere you can find in X. So you can find them everywhere with the same tag. That was about it. This was David Ramos reporting from the Emirates GBC Sustainability Lounge. Thank you for being there.
Thank you.